Hello, good to see you. Let's talk about what everybody is talking about right now. SpaceX, is it opportunity or an overpriced rocket? There's a lot of buzz around SpaceX and other AI companies right now, but history tells us hype does not always equal strong investor outcomes. So how should we weigh the opportunity versus the hype right now?
Hey, Aaron. Yeah, I'm so glad we're talking about this. I get so many people asking me about the SpaceX stock and how they could get in on it right now and they don't want to miss out. I will tell you, our stance here in our company is that we are incredibly cautious, blinking a bright yellow here when it comes to the SpaceX stock and potentially loading up on it.
And I'm sure one reason why you've done your homework, and historically, nearly 60% of IPOs since 1980 have returned zero or negative returns over 3 years. That's according to the University of Florida professor Jay Ritter. So, how should that shape the way investors approach high profile IPOs?
Right. IPOs are exciting a lot of times because they're something new, and people don't want to miss out,
Right.
getting in early and hanging on for the ride necessarily. So that's one of the things that we always urge caution about, especially with IPOs. It's a new company just going public. If you're going to invest in companies like this, usually we look at investing over a very long-term time horizon to give it, the time to have the ups and downs. But this isn't, IPOs aren't something you necessarily invest in to try to save your portfolio or have stable income come out of your portfolio. So you need to be really cautious about that.
Right. SpaceX was targeting a $1.75 trillion valuation, but Morningstar puts fair value closer to $780 billion. How important is valuation discipline when choosing how to invest?
Yeah. What's a trillion nowadays, Aaron, right? Trillions, billions. We're just throwing these
Funny
big
money.
numbers around.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, let's put it in perspective. I've got a visual here. This shows SpaceX's valuation compared to some of the other seven biggest stocks in the S&P 500. NVIDIA, Apple, Alphabet, which is Google, of course, and a few others. Look at that. They're valued at the time of their IPO. They were valued higher than Meta, which is Facebook. And so I said, hey, well, what is SpaceX earning? Like, what is their revenue every year? And their last reported revenue was about 18.7 billion. To put it in perspective for you, that's only about 9% of what Facebook earns every year.
Right.
And yet this stock is valued higher than Facebook, earning only a tenth of, what they're earning. So to me, this screams have extreme caution. There's no guarantee that next earnings report that SpaceX releases is going to show a huge jump in revenue like that. We really don't know. That's why investing can be risky. So we want to be careful. And, on that graphic, I had a couple other big names that are on the horizon here. OpenAI, they've talked about going public here relatively soon. And Anthropic, which they have their Claude AI model, is talking about going public here soon too. And look at their revenue. It's also a fraction of Meta or Facebook's, and their valuations are also really close. So sometimes that high optimism, that emotional investing that we talk about so often can drive these prices that can distort them early on around the IPO phase. So we're always super careful when it comes to these IPOs.
I know. I say this in a good way. Looking at that data, it's like a cold bucket of water on the hype that everybody's, kind of chasing this, which makes us, we all have FOMO. On that note, Kyle, my last question for investors who don't want to miss out but are wary of the risk, what is a more disciplined approach to evaluating whether and when to invest in a company like SpaceX or OpenAI or Anthropic?
So I'll tell you this, there may be a good chance that SpaceX ends up in your portfolio at some point this year, whether you are aware of it or not.
Right.
And the reason is that a lot of people own ETFs or mutual funds in their investment accounts currently. Those funds have their own managers that will seek out and buy stocks that they like. And another thing is that, SpaceX, because it's valued so high, there's a good chance that it ends up in the NASDAQ 100. So there's a good chance that it's going to be in a very popular index that a lot of people are invested in. If you own the QQQ ETF, for example, there's probably a good chance that you end up with SpaceX in that ETF at some point this year if things kind of continue the way they're going. So, be aware of what's in those investments currently. And then if you are interested, of course, it's something that may be a good long-term investment. So just do everything in a measured way. Make sure it lines up with the bigger picture, your big plan. that you have. I wouldn't throw my whole life savings into it right before I retire and then start pulling money out of my SpaceX position. That might be a little scary. So
Sounds a little risky. Yeah.
Yeah, be smart about it.
I don't think I would sleep well at night if I were doing that. So that being said, Kyle, like you said, it's going to be a different answer for everyone. But if somebody wants exposure or to talk through investing in SpaceX or another IPO, what's the best way to reach you with questions?
Absolutely. The best way is through our website. That's firstcoastfinancialgroup.com.
Great. Again, Kyle, thank you so much for making time for me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Erin.